Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Wu Says. This is where we get real about the US, China, everywhere and everything in between. It's two superpowers, but one global story. Now, this week, we will turn to a slightly thorny issue: Malaysia's controversial decision to host Donald Trump at the ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur this October. Now, I'm sure many struggle with this, myself included, given Trump's direct role in enabling Israel's genocide against Gaza. At the same time, the US's role in vetoing international efforts to stop the bloodshed. To invite him to Malaysia feels, at least to me, somewhat normalizing the unacceptable. However, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has defended the move, and he argues that Malaysia must balance our moral leadership with economic diplomacy and economic necessity, as well as the reality of global power affairs. Joining me, as always, to discuss this is Professor Wu Wing Thye, who is here to help us unpack the tightrope that Anwar Ibrahim is walking between principle and pragmatism. So, Prof. Wu, let's dive right into it. Do you believe Anwar made the right call in inviting Donald Trump to attend the ASEAN Summit?
Well, it was a very hard call to make. Because I'm sure Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim feels no less repulsed like you about Donald Trump. Here is a person who has been downright insulting towards Muslims and to almost every minority group that we can think of. And it's not just bullying minority groups. He has treated badly half of the human population. His attitude towards women, like on that open mic where he talks about grabbing women.
Yes.
And after all, he is also the guy who's a very good friend of Jeffrey Epstein, the well-known sexual predator. So this is a person who is no example of either good personal behavior or of great achievement in global leadership, like destroying the global trade system, destroying the Paris Climate Treaty. The truth is, we need the United States to help us solve many of the world's problems. And we need a less belligerent United States so that the global economic system can still function. And what we have, the dilemma that Anwar faces is the same dilemma that the rest of the world also faces. And before I talk about how Anwar has responded to it, let me talk about how some other countries have responded to it. Trump recently visited the United Kingdom. They gave him a 21-gun salute. They roll out the red carpets at every place, including a dinner with King Charles at Buckingham Palace. And the Prime Minister of England never stopped praising Trump throughout his visit. Now, praising Trump does get you some goodies. For example, if you look at the tariff rate of the European Union, the tariff rate is roughly 15% for France, for Germany, and so forth. Britain had 10%. So buying friendly to Great Britain Britain was able to get a much better trade deal than anybody, than its neighbors. Another example I want to bring to mind is when Trump went for the NATO summit, and he, of course, claimed great credit for stopping conflict elsewhere in the world. Like he claimed to have stopped the fighting between Thailand and Cambodia when it is our Anwar Ibrahim that actually brought about that happy state of affairs of a ceasefire. Now, so he was claiming credit about that the fight between Iran and Israel is not something you can do easily. It's like little children fighting, sometimes you can let them fight for a while before you can persuade them not to fight. And at that moment, the Secretary General of NATO jumps in and said, yeah, Daddy knows best. Daddy has to stop bad things from happening. Well, what has that daddy earned NATO? Well, Trump basically agreed to NATO taking a longer time in reaching 5% of spending, or 5% of its budget to be spent on military rearmament. So praising Trump makes it easier for Trump to climb down from his unreasonable positions. For us, the average tariff rate of ASEAN is 19%. And the negotiations are not done. They are still ongoing. In fact, a few days ago, the US trade negotiator said that if we do not make faster progress, we will have to raise the tariff rate on ASEAN. So we are talking about not just Malaysia, that our economic prosperity is on the line, is that of ASEAN as well. We many times have to walk, like you said, walk a tightrope between showing publicly our disapproval of the person versus trying to increase the welfare of our country. So this is the tightrope we are in. Tight walk. But right. We got to remember, Malaysia, when faced with a situation like this, has also responded in a similar manner. Back in 2020, when the now opposition party, the coalition of PAS Bersatu was in power, we had criticized Modi in early 2020 about his unacceptable behavior and attitude towards Muslims in India. There were actions that were definitely highly discriminatory, and Muslims in India were protesting that. And we voiced our support for the Muslims in India. And what did India do? It stopped buying palm oil from Malaysia. And the result was our farmers, like the people in the Felda scheme, really started experiencing great difficulties. So we sent our plantation minister, Mr. Khairuddin, who is from PAS, by the way, to India. And I think he said all the right things, because very shortly, Modi allowed India to resume buying palm oil from Malaysia. Now, what it means is we do have to show public disapproval, but we also have to minimize the economic damage from expressing this public disapproval.
Okay. All right. So there has to be a certain degree of pragmatism when it comes to balancing some of the economic diplomacy. I hear what you're saying. So talk to me a little bit about the tariffs. You mentioned that having Donald Trump in Malaysia would be an opportunity for Malaysia to proceed with tariff negotiations, and there could be repercussions for other ASEAN countries as well. I want to explore that further because I know Ibrahim has already also said that the semiconductor exports to the US are at stake here. I mean, it could rejecting Trump could hurt those sectors and the livelihoods of many. So, talk to me a little bit about the trade-offs between having Trump here versus the backlash that we can anticipate, and whether there is an economic narrative that is persuasive.
Well, I must say that it's very brave of Anwar Ibrahim to take on this trade-off politically, largely because we know that there will surely be a backlash in Malaysia. And we have to know, but what are the important things that we do want to ensure? We want to ensure that Malaysia lives in a zone of peace. In other words, where the Chinese and the Americans are not engaged in confrontation. Now, China is going to be at this ASEAN summit as well. I do not think Xi Jinping will come because he was here in April. So I expect Prime Minister Zhang Qiang to be here. The good news is there is a chance for both sides to meet here. In addition to us trying to get Donald Trump to be amenable to telling his people, don't be so don't be so hard on Malaysia. We can cut them a little slack. They're a little small country. This is a small region. They're not going to have much impact on us anyway. Now, this is something that is very likely to happen because, in a way, Donald Trump is very eager to close the deal too, because after all, he's Mr. Deal Maker. So we make it easier for him to get down from his unreasonable stance on trade and military confrontation with China. So and with this gives us a chance to also show to Donald Trump that the rest of the world is moving ahead on confronting important global challenges like climate change. It is because I expect ASEAN to announce a commitment to quickly bring into reality the ASEAN power grid, which will greatly make the greening of our energy system cheaper than if we were to do it, if each ASEAN country were to do it individually. So we go ahead and do what we feel is correct for us, and at the same time reduce the cost of Donald Trump's policies. But yeah, we are not wavering in our support for the Palestinians, who are really, in a most tragic position.
You mentioned China will be present at the ASEAN Summit. If Xi Jinping skips the October summit while Trump attends, does that shift the optics and the balance of influence within ASEAN. Malaysia again trying to play a neutral role in balancing between these two superpowers. So if one attends while the other doesn't, does it look like we are favoring one over the other?
Well, everybody understands why President Xi will not be there. He was here in April. So it is not that we are favoring one side over another. And of course, just because I predicted that President Xi would not come, he could well show up, because it really depends that whether he sees this occasion as the right time to engage Donald Trump in a broader discourse. Because Donald Trump has been saying a number of times, I'm going to go to China very soon and we are going to wrap up a deal on China. But hey, he has said this for the last year and nothing has happened. And a meeting between them here might well lay the basis for a subsequent Trump visit to China. And so I would not rule out the possibility of Xi coming. But I would think it would be even greater possibility that Trump will go on to China after the ASEAN conference, because he's been angling for an invitation to go to China for so long. And if he's already out in the region, he could very well be willing to go on to China for his visit. So it depends on how the Chinese wishes to play it.
What makes you say that, Prof? What makes you say that he is keen or interested or angling to for an invitation to go to China? Has there been anything that has shown that he is quite interested to be physically present in China?
Oh yes, he has. He has said many times, like a trade is will be done soon, and then the White House talks about the grand bargain between the two countries, and after all, Trump is running for the Nobel Prize. Just like today, he unilaterally announced the imposition of peace in the Middle East, because he has just announced a 20-point plan with Netanyahu of peace in Gaza, which he demands that Hamas accepts. This is a situation where it's not a peace that is negotiated between the parties concerned, but to be imposed by the United States together with some neighboring countries in the Middle East. As you know, that both Egypt and Qatar are now presenting the 20-point peace plan to Hamas. You could see that Donald Trump is trying very hard to get that Nobel Peace Prize. So I think that he is open for a deal to China. And I think this trip to Malaysia has at its background the hope that Xi Jinping would finally say, I'm ready to deal too. So the fruits of his visit to ASEAN will have to depend on other important negotiations that are being conducted between the United States and other countries in the region.
If Trump were to come in October for the ASEAN Summit, does that risk detracting the focus away from the ASEAN Summit and have it all be all about Trump? I can imagine that Donald Trump will suck the oxygen out of any room he's in. He becomes the main focus of the conversation. How might other ASEAN member countries respond to his presence there? At this point, I'm not certain if any sitting U.S. president has ever attended an ASEAN summit. Whether he's the first, I'm not quite sure. I will have to check that. But how, given the current relationship other ASEAN countries have with the US, would his presence at the summit be welcome, or would it cause more resentment or fragmentation within the bloc?
Well, the first thing is, yes, previous US presidents have attended ASEAN Summit before. So the heads of state of Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, Korea, and the United States, president being in the same room at ASEAN meeting. Yes, that has happened before, but not every time. Yes, Donald Trump will suck the oxygen out from the room the moment he enters, but the ASEAN meeting goes on for more than one day. The ASEAN leaders will first meet by themselves as a group. And then the next day, it would be with the United States in the room. So yes, for one day, that day may belong to Donald Trump. But if President Xi were also there, then there will be a historic occasion, because the only reason President Xi would come is only because it will be because that there are items that would be negotiated between the two large powers. What's the attitude of the other ASEAN countries about this? I'm sure I would be interested to know which of the 10 ASEAN countries would embrace Donald Trump as a role model, or to sing praises in private about him. I would think none. But they would recognize that having him there could only help the completion of the ongoing trade talks between the United States and the individual ASEAN countries. Okay. So they see the benefit of this to themselves, without themselves taking the risk of hosting Donald Trump in their capitals. So Anwar Ibrahim is taking the bullet for them.
Okay.
And so I doubt that they would be, I doubt that this would not split ASEAN.
Okay.
The president of Donald Trump.
So for those of us, for the Malaysians out there who are struggling to reconcile this, right? So thinking about the kind of moral costs of welcoming Trump, and the heavy moral cost of welcoming Trump, and reconciling that with the economic diplomacy, the pragmatism of negotiating, having Trump here in the room to negotiate directly with him and for the other ASEAN countries as well. So what advice do you have for us Malaysians, myself included, who are still struggling to reconcile the heavy moral cost of having Donald Trump here in KL, along with the fact that we know rationally that there's a pragmatism we have to embrace when we think about economic diplomacy, when we think about having Trump in the room with us to negotiate these tariffs. And it's not just us, it's also other ASEAN countries as well. That debate between principle and pragmatism, for many Malaysians, we're still having it. What would you say? What would you like us to consider and to keep in mind while we're having this debate?
I think we should use this as an opportunity to show Donald Trump that we disagree with him, but we want to use this opportunity to also show that we would do it I'll show this, our disagreement in a civilized manner. We should have peaceful protests, And we should put up signs at our home, like possibly putting up a Palestinian flag along with the Malaysian flag. But we want to show that we are not going to go riot in the street like engaging in the violent ways that is that mark political discourse in the United States. There was a recent shooting in Utah of a Trump supporter who makes it a point to provoke others about uh, the correctness of Donald Trump's policy. It was just so sad that the response to this political provocation was that someone shot him. We should show that political discourse here in Malaysia takes a more civilized form. We should therefore definitely show our disagreement, but we will not do so in a manner that also disgraces ourselves.
Right. Well, Prof, Wu, thank you so much for giving us some food for thought. That's it for this episode of Wu Says. I'm Melissa Idris, and I will see you in the next episode. Till then, bye bye, folks.